Good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov. Stephen, you have your side today for your uncle, and I see that he's your father's brother, who's both are. Your father was Shlomo ben Shimon Yosef, and he had his yahrzeit yesterday on Shabbat, and his brother is Yeshua ben Shimon Yosef, and he has yahrzeit today. Wow, goodness me! So, did they actually die? Is their yahrzeit one day after the other, or separated by some years? You're muted, so we can't hear you.
Still on mute, Stephen.
You're still muted.
Yeah.
That's good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right. So this was my uncle,
Yes.
and he died in 1933. The Nazis came to power at the end of January 1933, and he was a member of the Social Democratic Party in Germany and a group called the Reichsbanner. And they realized that there was no way the Nazis could be removed from power except by force. And he was a leader of one of the groups of this Reichsbanner. And he got assassinated in front of my grandparents' house in early March 1933. So they were the first in line to be removed because they were the main threat to Nazi rule. And so that's him. And
So is today actually the yahrzeit?
Well, the 9th of Adar is. I think it's the 9th of Adar too, actually.
Yes, well, today is the 9th of Adar. So
that's right.
Amazingly, your father and, I mean, many years separated.
Absolutely,
their
yeah. My dad died in 97.
But extraordinarily,
Yes.
their yahrzeit is contiguous, one after the other.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is amazing.
And, but he was a hero. So there's a plaque now at the spot that he was assassinated as a hero of the Weimar Republic. And they were perhaps a bit foolhardy, but history might have been rather different if they'd succeeded.
And so that photograph in that book over there, where was that photograph taken, and what's...
Well, it was, he was only about 20, end of 20s, early 30s. My cousin, my oldest cousin, both my two oldest cousins were actually born in Germany. My father's sister was much older than my father, and she got married in Germany. And so they now live in America. My oldest cousin is a history professor, was at Cornell University, and he wrote, this is one of the books he wrote about our family history. And yeah, so it was quite history. They were my two cousins. They got taken to the camp I described that my mother's parents got taken to on the border between Germany and Poland. But they got out together with their mother. The mother went to America, and the two boys were on the last ship out from Poland before the Second World War. And they went to Devon. They settled in Devon for a while. And school, I think the JFS or Jewish schools were evacuated there. So, but during the war, my dad arranged for them to go to America to join their mum. So they went on a convoy of ships across the Atlantic in the war, and the ship in front of them and the ship behind got sunk, but they made it. So,
Lawrence, it sounds like you've got another My Story coming up over here.
And yesterday, because we had a gathering at Shul for Parshat Zachor, I was able to say Kaddish, which was very moving. And somebody told me they felt particularly emotional hearing Kaddish for the first time in a few months. So thanks for doing
anyway, thank you very much for that.
What, at Parshat Zachor yesterday?
Yes, yeah.
was there and said Kaddish because we had a minyan.
Right.
And somebody else remarked to me how he hasn't heard Kaddish for months because we haven't been open. He hasn't been with a minyan. And just hearing Stephen say Kaddish was very emotional for him. For this other person, another member of ours. Amazing. I felt emotional because you were saying Kaddish for your dad, who's a leader of this community, and your uncle, who you've just described now.
Yeah.
All right, just very quickly, we've seen in previous letters that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was very strong on the autonomy of young people, that they should be allowed to make up their own minds, etc. A young man who'd there was parents who were trying to force him to do something, and the Rebbe said, should allow him You don't force your older children. It's not good for them. It breeds resentment. It's not good for your relationship. You've got to give them space, etc. Well, here in this letter, here we have something entirely different. I'd like to take issue with you, however, to somebody in Indianapolis, Indiana, on the subject of your youngest daughter, who you write is 11 years old, and she has resisted going to Hebrew school. However, you're very proud to say that you didn't, quote, force the issue. You can well imagine my reaction to this, says the Rebbe. He's not going to be hearing good news now and what follows. Even if your 11-year-old girl would have resisted going to school altogether, you would have been found it necessary to, so to speak, force the issue, if the term force can ever be applied over here. So why have you got this? Why have you got these two standards? If it was a question of going to school, there'd be no question that you'd be, impressing upon her, making sure that she goes to school. She doesn't want to go to Cheder. Oh, that's all right. That's fine. We won't force the issue. She's 11 years old. She's a big girl. She can make her own decisions on this matter. There's the whiff of double standards here. He said, certainly insofar as a Jewish child is concerned, her Hebrew education is at least as important as her general education. And this has been generally recognized throughout the ages, but it should be particularly recognized in our own day and age, for we have seen many of the greatest and the saintliest of our people exterminated by a murderous enemy. And this, of course, ties in beautifully with Stephen's yahrzeit. Consequently, all of us who have been fortunate enough to survive have a duty to make up for this tremendous loss. On the one hand, we see that the forces of total assimilation, on the other hand, we see that the forces of assimilation have grown much stronger in the free and democratic countries. So he really takes issue with her. Anyway, it turns out that she has now agreed to be in Cheder, but he's got some further comments to say on that as well. This touches on something which is extremely, extremely prevalent in our own times. We see, that the attitude of parents towards Cheder is so completely different to their attitude towards schooling in general. It's an optional extra. It's something which they'd like for their children, but if the child doesn't want to go, it's not something which you're going to force upon them. And it's a very strange thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later.